Hey everybody, I'm here with my dear friend, Mr. David Bendeth, who's really been a great friend to me and my channel over the past couple years. He not only offered his place for me to stay here in New Jersey for the past couple days, but also has been instrumental in convincing me to explore doing more interviews. And I really appreciate that.
Oh. Today was the culminating experience. I'm not going to say who you interviewed, but today
was a good day.
It was like I shared your day. You know, I wasn't there, but I felt it.
So David started out in the music business as a producer. He's had many, many hit records. Been an A&R guy, done just about everything as a musician, guitar player, starting back. When did you start, David? When did you start playing professionally?
17. About 17.
So back in 1990 or so.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It was a great time. And there was lots more clubs than there are now.
Right. We were just talking about the old school music business, and I just love the stories that he tells because this is when things used to be, when people had, record labels had tons of money to do stuff.
They had CDs.
They had CDs that they sold.
Those things you can't see.
Let's talk about your experience coming up and moving from being a musician to being to getting into production and also working at a record label. Wow. Talk about some of the people that you played with in the past, first of all.
Well, I've been very blessed, so I have to say I always said I wanted to play with better musicians than myself. So my first album, I had Billy Cobham on one side, Lenny White playing drums on the other side, and Marcus Miller playing bass, who was 16 when he played on my first record. So, I thought I was dreaming. I kept pinching myself going, and we did these, first takes, and everybody played live, and we plugged into amp. We had separate booths, but we just went for it.
Talk about how you moved from being a player into production and working at labels, because they all went hand in hand.
So my first record that I made as an artist was produced by this guy called Alan Caddy. And Alan was the guitar player in a band called the Tornadoes.
Okay.
And they had a big hit called Telstar.
Okay.
Actually,
I don't know this.
That's okay.
Okay.
Matt Bellamy's father from Muse was in the band too. So, yeah, I have like these links of 7 Degrees of David Bendeth. But anyway, he got divorced halfway through the record, left to go deal with it, and kind of stuck me with the engineer behind the console, which was one of the worst things of my whole experiences of life, in the sense that I really had no clue what I was doing, and I was already having enough problems playing guitar. Plus, we were working on this console called an Olive, which was made in Canada.
Never heard of this.
There's only 5 in the world, and it was the first automated console ever made, before SSL.
Okay.
Olive console. So it did.
You're talking like flying faders kind of thing? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Before anything.
I've never heard of this console.
That's okay. You'll research it.
Okay.
So I got through.
Hold on. Before I go on, David has produced some massively big records that we're going to come to. Just recent records that have been that you guys will know. So let's go back.
So that was my first experience really recording my record, and I was playing with the greatest music. I played with wonderful players, and they taught me how to play in time, and I played with Lenny White here in New York a bunch, and Billy Cobham live. We ended up touring. So it was sort of like being immersed into the deep end of a swimming pool. That was extremely cold, especially when you got those looks across the stage, like you're speeding up. But the greatest thing about Billy Cobham was he would play ahead of me, even when I sped up. He kind of said, you can either drag a donkey up a hill or you can push him back. And he went ahead of me and pushed me back.
Right.
And the whole band jerked, you can imagine. That taught me how to kind of lay back as a guitar player, because we all have that problem.
Guitar players.
All of us.
All guitar players.
So you play, just take everything and move it back 12 milliseconds.
And then you're set.
You're all set. So that was my experience. And then I made a few more records. I toured for like 10 years. And then had a child. And I went, I better get a job.
Right.
I better get a job. So I worked for CBS Records, which was Columbia Records at the time, in Canada, and I was a staff producer, and I made records. Then I worked on Platinum Blonde. And
Okay.
We had Loverboy, and we had Larry Gowan, who now sings for Styx, and they were all platinum artists. And then I tried to sign certain artists; they wouldn't let me, Katie Lang, and so I quit. Like I quit, and then they kind of went, "Yeah, it's okay, you can quit," thinking that they would keep me there. Little did I know.
Right.
That was my first experience with a label. That was like 3 or 4 years at that label. And then I went to BMG RCA in Canada, where I signed the Crash Test Dummies and the Cowboy Junkies for you old people. They're old. And I did so well that they were so happy with me, they transferred me here to New York. And I worked at RCA in Times Square for 8 years. Culminating experience was Elvis 30 #1 hits, which I was asked to produce and mix. And it sold way more records than it was supposed to. And I'm not going to say they didn't want to pay me, but they didn't want to pay me.
That's the record business.
That's the record business. You kind of get used to that.
Right.
And then I went off on my own to spent the last 20 years producing independently, being a writer and mixing, a lot of mixing. Mm-hmm. So that's been my career from the 90s.
Okay, well, talk about some of these records. So so you had some huge records: Paramore,
Riot,
Breaking Benjamin.
I produced and mixed Breaking Benjamin. I did 4 albums: the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, and then a lot of rock bands.
A lot of rock bands,
like a lot.
Yeah,
for a guy that didn't really like rock that much.
Right.
I like what you like.
So you and me are two jazz guys or fusion guys that got into rock, that worked in rock, in production.
When you do your video and somebody plays a solo and you go, oh, yeah, and I'm like this with you, going before you sometimes, oh, because it does that shivers thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's my background.
Well, this is kind of the type people that get into production are the people like that.
Oh yeah, because it's those little moments.
That's right.
And we start to think, well, how can we
recreate
that?
those? Right. How do we recreate those in every song?
And when we hear them, it's like we've never heard it before.
That's right.
We don't know why, but we've never heard it before.
Okay, so this is something we've never talked about. How many times do you listen to a song before it's done? Think about that.
Way too many.
How many times? I mean,
honestly,
thousands.
Like with mixing alone in one day, I counted like 80.
Right. But I mean, in the entire time of tracking from the beginning?
Hundreds and hundreds and
hundreds. From pre-production and everything?
1,000.
Right.
Easy.
Every song on a record.
Easy.
Yeah.
And you know what the funny thing is? People say to me when a song of mine comes on the radio, and I go like, turn it off, because I already know where all the bodies are buried. I already know. And they go, what? I love that song.
Yeah.
Don't turn it off. And I go, you don't understand. I can never listen to that.
Right.
It makes me sick.
Right.
And I go, somebody turn the cymbal down. Somebody turn that guitar. You know, that's how I listen to my own mixes. Yeah.
You can't help that, though.
No, it's addiction to perfection. It's the problem.
That's right.
Addiction to perfection is a bad producer-mixer issue.
The music business started to decline because of Napster in '99. 2000 was the pinnacle of that labels made the most money ever, and then it started to decline very quickly after that. But you had big hits after.
Before and after.
I'm
an analog and a digital
That's
guy.
right.
You know what? I'd like to say I had big hits. I think the artists I work with, I was really good at picking who to work with.
Right.
You know, I knew music, and I'm not going to say I was trained, not like you, certainly, but certainly I was around enough great musicians to recognize greatness. Yeah. And I've always felt honored to be in the room. And they kind of pushed me around back then, because that's what people did. Like, if you play a gig with Billy Cobham and you kind of played a wrong note, it'd be like, they'd start laughing, but it wasn't really funny. Like, they thought it was funny, but you were like, ah. And you're playing in front of, at Paul's Mall at Berklee, or you're playing at the, some club with all these players.
Right.
It's not that great.
Right.
So, yeah, you kind of get used to the errors. I would put any success for myself down to thousands of mistakes made over and over again. I mean, at one point it was so bad that a label said, Bendeth, you're a pretty good producer. You're not bad. Like you're talented. That's the word they would use. You're talented. And I'm like, oh, thanks. Don't ever mix a song. Don't ever go near the console when it comes to mixing, because you don't have three names,
right?
At all. You're just David Bendeth. You don't have the three names,
right? You need three names.
You need three names to be any back then.
Yeah.
Plus, you really don't know what you're doing. You're bottom end. Your vocals suck. If I were you, stick to producing. Stay the hell out of the mixing room. I was really sorry. I would do that, and the next thing you know, your mix would come back by people that are right.
Yep.
I'll go, what the hell? I just spent 6 months, and it came back. The kick sounded like a cardboard box. Way too much vocal reverb, and all the crap that you would just go, no. The band was like, the label, they love it.
Of course.
Like, then you're done.
Then you're done.
That's
you're done.
it,
If the label loves it, doesn't
done.
matter what the producer or the band says.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
The label, most of the labels loved it. And my friend sat me down a few times and said, look, Bendeth, we love you. You're a great guy. Don't mix anymore. It's just too painful for you. And you're not experienced. So there was a studio in Times Square called Mirror Image. And these guys gave me the room for 6 months to learn how to mix. So I was in this room, A-Bing against all these Michael Brower and Andy Wallace. Of course, Chris and Tommy. And I'm not going to tell you, I sat in there for 6 months and I walked out, But I started to understand what it was from a balance standpoint that they did. And I think once that happened, it was like, okay, now how do I make the bass come out? How do I dial in that EQ? How do I compress this so it's, sitting down? And so it was sort of years of 4, maybe 5 or 6. I don't think I mixed one good song until I was 45. That's the truth. But I'd been making all these records, and the mixes, I can't even listen to them. Some of them are not good. Some of them are pretty good. But then I did this record with Paramore. Actually, it was Red Jumpsuit, Hawthorne Heights era, right around there. And I went right into this Paramore Riot record, and we were going.
Cooking.
Now we're like, okay, let's take all of that, put it together. You're working with this 17-year-olds that are phenomenal singers and players. She's a phenomenal singer. And I'm not going to tell you, each one of those mixes was one day, but it kind of mixed itself, and which is what happens when you produce a record and you mix it. Where the bodies are buried. That's already. Right. You've heard it, like you said, 8,000
times. Right.
And so that record was a defining moment for me and a lot of other people that worked on it, the engineers, the band, everybody. And so from there, it was like, okay, I got a sail. I got a full sail of steam. And then the next batch really started to kick in. I did All Time Low, and I did Papa Roach, and I did, just kept rock. And I was waiting for Earth, Wind, and Fire to call.
Right.
But it never happened.
No, right?
Pat Metheny never called me.
Right.
No, it was...
This is so funny that you and I are the same, that...
We are.
We had such similar careers with our backgrounds.
We're brothers from another musician.
Right, and working with these rock bands. But our training is our background is really what made us good at it, though.
I think what we have in common, you and I, for sure, is the ability to hear something and then want to immediately hear it again.
Yes.
Because we just can't believe what we heard.
Well, that's the whole thing. That's how... That's the only way to be good at something, I think.
And then they add up.
Yeah.
And the whole song, there's like these nuggets.
That's right.
And it's those little things.
What makes this song great?
Exactly. That.
Yeah.
Every time you do that, I go, wow.
Yeah. And you try to find those moments. I try to find them as a producer, but we initially learned about that stuff as listeners. What did we enjoy from the songs?
You were always interested in me because you just knew so much, technique and theory. And then, in some strange way, and I love this about you, I'm being your producer right now, I'm not going to lie, but you would throw that away sometimes and go, no! Last night, we're going to tell the truth. Last night, we're sitting around, and guess what? He says, you know what? We're talking about favorite songs. By the way, Rick and I could talk for literally, if you locked us in this room for a week and bought us cheese sandwiches, we'd still be here doing this. Right. We don't even need a camera. We can just keep going because that's who we are. He goes, you know what? The Rolling Stones, man, when I put on Angie, and I looked at him and went, wow, that's your favorite song? Oh, no, yeah. no, like, that's what you're, oh yeah. Just the minute, the way that comes in with Keith Richards. And I'm like, wow. And then he goes, and yeah, Exile on Main Street. When I hear that record, and I'm really interested in this, because Rick really only kind of shows one side. But this is
I'm always talking about the Beatles and everything, but I'm such a huge Stones fan. And that's
so raw.
Right.
So messy.
Right. But that's what I love about it. It's so vibey.
Now I get the 80s thing that you like too, because that is the same thing, that messy stuff.
I love that mess. I love the messy stuff like that.
So, I mean, I grew up in the 60s. I'm the generation before you. It doesn't mean I'm better. It just means that, like Pink Floyd, Miles Davis, all those great records, I got to see them live.
Right. David's seen everybody. Tell him who you've seen.
I've seen Jimi Hendrix twice. I've seen Cream. I've seen Frank Zappa.
Led Zeppelin.
Saw their first show in
Not only has he seen them, he'll tell me he's seen them, and then he'll send me a picture. Then he'll send me another picture and another picture. He has pictures of these gigs. I mean, it's insane that I said, why did you always have a camera around?
Well, my friends had cameras. I think I had a Brownie.
Okay.
It wasn't that great. But you sort of knew there was only 600 people at Led Zeppelin. The shock of Led Zeppelin was these 7 songs in 2.5 hours. But the highlight was the second hour when Robert Plant took off his shirt.
Right.
That was the highlight of that show. I mean, no offense to Jimmy Page playing the telecast with the violin bow, with a Wem copycat going around. Yeah, I mean, I'm very lucky in that I've got to see, Yes on their first tour. I got to see Genesis on their first tour, Gentle Giant.
Man.
And then, of course, Chick Corea, Return to Forever, all Mahavishnu. I mean, I was spoiled rotten.
I mean, you were really born at the right time for all this.
Oh, my God. Well, it was great because I had this friend that played bass, this Jamaican guy called Keith Jones, who ended up playing with Santana. Keith, if you're out there, I love you. And he says, your music sucks. That's what he said to me. He played with Air too, and as well. Anyway, I said, what do you mean? He goes, all this crap, all this rock is just crap. And I go, well, I like it. I can play it. He says, yeah, it's not very good. It doesn't take any imagination. And I'm like, oh, what should I be listening to? And he sort of rolled this, he was a Jamaican, so he rolled this big joint. And I was 17. He says, sit on this pillow. And he gives me this joint, and he plays Bitches Brew. And by the end of that record, not only was I zonked out of my mind, but I had seen the Wayne Shorter, Herbie Hancock, Keith Jarrett, Lenny White, anybody you want to say was on that record.
Right.
And I was like, oh my God.
Right.
Then straight into Tribute to Jack Johnson, which was a shuffle, a double album that had a shuffle. It was one song. Right. You turned it over and the shuffle just faded up. So my background sort of changed completely. And it shocked me that this world had opened up. And I really didn't understand it, of course. I just know I liked it.
Right.
You hear Jan Hammer play like a mini move with Mahavishnu and go, that's a guitar. And you go, no,
it's not.
No, he's learned your licks and played them way better.
That's right. Exactly.
And stretched them in tune.
Exactly.
Right. So, yeah, my ears started to change, like probably, like yours started to change in jazz, swing, and everything else. Then you started to have this sort of music appreciation for things that you didn't understand and you wanted to learn about them. Which to me, as Miles Davis said, if you can't learn something every day, you really shouldn't be in a business.
But we both started out in rock and then went to jazz, fusion and jazz and things like that.
Yeah. Which I wish
and
it was
then came
the other
back
way.
to rock. No.
No, really? Yeah.
No,
Okay.
No, I think this is it's the right way, because when you come home to rock, just having that initial appreciation for it as a young kid, I think really brings something for me as a producer. Understanding, I call it aesthetic aptitude, understanding what's cool, even it doesn't matter how old you are. Because you experience this when you're a kid, the excitement for it, and you kind of always retain that. And maybe I think if you started with jazz, then you're coming to it, and it's not, you don't understand it on a visceral level as a child, from being a teenager and liking rock music. Yeah,
there's something raw about rock music and a guitar.
Right.
and drugs and all of that went with it during that period, the 60s, the 70s. We lost a lot of great ones, and nobody seemed to learn much from that. But
That's right.
My favorite sounding records are probably from that era in regards to rock.
Yeah.
You know, I would hear Jimi Hendrix Band of Gypsies, a live
Amazing.
record. Or
Yeah.
Even Frampton Comes Alive. There were certain
Amazing.
records that
That's
sort
right.
of bypassed any experience you would have in a car just because it was live and it felt. And not really those records that we love were live, kind of. They played them in the studio.
That's
together.
right. Yeah, yeah.
So that was something I miss in the later years. You know, people in a room playing together.
Yeah. Because that's really not how records are made now.
No, nobody's. In fact, they're in different countries.
They're in different countries, right?
So it was. I feel spoiled by having the ability to understand what that was and be there, and then I started to work in the studios and learned from the Bob Ezrins and the Jack Richardsons.
So he's learning from the greatest producers and engineers, and I mean, you've worked with everybody, but these guys.
Well, I worked with them. I worked for them. Sorry, I don't
For
think
them.
I worked with them. Yeah, because we learned. You know, we were in a studio, all of us together.
Yeah.
Randy Staub and Garth Richardson and
Yeah.
Scott Humphrey and Rick Chickey, and we were all at the same time in these rooms with these monster that were incredible music people.
Yes.
I mean, the first thing we learned how to do was load and unload the dishwasher. There was a five.
This is a thing that
Yeah.
you'd learn, though.
Five pages of instructions.
Right.
They said if you don't know how to do that, you don't know how to put a signal chain in the room.
Right.
Which they're right.
Well, you don't get a chance to put a signal chain in the room.
Yeah, forget it. So yeah, we stole a lot of stuff in regards to the settings.
Because guys back then, this is true too. We talked about this last night. The guys from the earlier eras were very secretive about stuff they did.
Yes.
That was a thing where
Proprietary.
yes.
But they left the studio after
That's
that,
right.
and we would look, and write down how did they do it. Sounded great. You'd want to run up there and look at it, but you didn't.
I know certain producers. I remember working at a studio, NRG, out in LA, and there was a certain producer. I won't mention his name, but the studio owner, Jay, told me that he would zero out the console every day, everything, when he was tracking, because he'd come in every day and have it reset up, just so that other engineers wouldn't come in and look at his settings, how he got his bass sounds, how he got his guitar sounds. It wouldn't look at the EQs. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Nuts. Well, we were on staff, so and we were visited. We were there all the time.
You were there. You were working there, and then so to do the thing.
Yeah, you gotta be very careful.
Right.
And did we get caught up? Yeah, In fact, Bob Ezrin, if you're looking, I love you, and you did come to my studio a few years ago and ask me for your ADR settings, which I was more than happy to give you. And I love
Wait, okay,
you.
so tell people who Bob Ezrin is that
Bob
don't know.
Ezrin is a Canadian producer that did most of, if not all of, the Alice Cooper records.
Yep.
He did most of the Kiss records, but most important, he did The Wall, produced and mixed, and
Pink Floyd.
A lot of Pink Floyd records, maybe 4 or 5 of those. Rod Stewart, Peter Gabriel. Bob is incredible.
Yes.
And a great guitar player and a great musician. And somebody that was really tough, but you could ask questions if you were really cool. And Jack Richardson he lived behind me with Garth, his son. And Jack was also incredible. He did all the Guess Who records. He did Bob Seger. Night Moves.
Classics.
Classic records.
Yeah.
And so we were around these people that had these, American Woman type hits, and we were there going, we're so lucky, pinch me. And then, so we were sponge. We were just a sponge. And we got to ask questions and see how they mic things and listen to their mixes. And it was, you got yelled at. I'm not going to lie to you. We got really yelled at a lot because, you would slack off and we would spend 3 days there, never go home.
Right.
Because you were just doing stuff, I don't know, busy. But it was awesome. It was a great time. And I'll never forget that time.
Okay, so let's talk about records, how records have changed from, let's go late 90s, early 2000s, and then today. Let's say mid 90s, when records were still made on analog tape, and then the transition to digital, and then when records were made in Pro Tools, and then today. Explain the difference in these.
Okay,
these
I mean, it was interesting because right around 91, there was a piece of gear, Studer, that was a stereo sampling unit. And you could sample for 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And so that was like somebody went, oh, I have an idea. Let's take the background vocals of chorus 1
moving to chorus 2.
Them, and you could sync it up with your Roland.
That's right.
And run SMPTE and drop it in. And then, well, wait a minute. Well, let's do that to the guitars. We like those guitars. Let's make those go there.
This is like early Pro Tools, basically.
This is exactly that.
Yeah.
And then we had these dash machines. We would mix down to half digital or half analog. You could change it.
Right.
And go back. So we got used to, all of a sudden, around 89, 90, we started to hear digital for the first time, really. And then the sampling, the Akai, and then the 760 Roland came out. And all of these, things that would take literally 2 weeks to figure out the manual.
Right.
Remember the manuals?
Oh, yeah, of course.
And if you didn't read them, you're really in trouble.
No, you couldn't use the things.
Yeah, it was terrible. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you how much stuff I lost. Just I didn't know how to save stuff. But anyway, that was the beginning of it, the digital. But it was still sort of split. People were just figuring it out.
Some people didn't want to change over, but then the people that would adopt it and just record fully into Pro Tools. That was really around 2000.
Just before that, Cubase really had it, Nuendo. Cubase.
And you used Nuendo.
I did. I was given Ray
right.
in Toronto, this guy, Ren, who's the head of the Exchange now.
Yep.
But he gave me my first CD. When you get an AOL CD,
you
come over with a Cubase CD and put it into my Quadra 650. And that was it. It was like we were gone. We had MIDI. And that was okay. And then we'd mix down and burn CDs, and things started to change very quickly. But still, people loved analog. It wasn't till I got to 2000. I'll never forget this day. It was a huge day. I was in a room with my engineer, Dan Corniff, and John Bender, and we were mixing Breaking Benjamin's We Are Not Alone. And I think what happened was that they were fed up with all of the mixes I was doing, and we were printing it to half inch, so it would be like $80 a reel.
Right.
And there'd be like 4 reels for every track because you only put 3 songs on.
Right.
And Dan said, I bet you can't tell the difference between half inch and analog. And I go, what are you, nuts?
Half inch and digital.
Digital. Sorry, did I say, digital. I said, what are you, crazy? Of course I can. I go, we're going to blindfold you and turn you around, and we're going to play your mix that you just did 10 times. And we want you to tell us which one is analog, which one is digital. Oh, they come in 30 seconds like, analog. I know my analog. Of course, 7 out of 10 wrong.
Right.
So they went, okay, that's about it, right? I go, I'm done. That's the end of it. Take all the half-inch
That's
tapes.
a great way to learn, to really learn that.
It was painful, actually, for me. I had to let go of everything I knew. And I still kept telling them that the reverb those numbers weren't holding. They were not holding for the analog reverbs. And they were like, what do you mean not holding? I go, it just seems shorter. The digital doesn't hold the reverb long. Well, that's probably true at the sampling rate.
Sure.
Could
be.
I just saw the interview with Porcupine Tree producer. Steve, is it?
Steve.
And
Steve
it was
Wilson.
fantastic because he actually explained it really well, how it translates. And so I started those little things, but it wasn't like enough to use this much tape.
That's right. At $80 a reel.
At $80 a reel. So that was 2000. Things started to change, and then of course Pro Tools starts to come in, as you said, and Cubase and Windows, and all of a sudden now all the DAWs are coming in. Not like that now. It's all over the place.
Right.
But no real plugins yet. Just kind of like still outboard gear, still taking notes, really boring stuff. And still printing passes for 2.5 hours and all that stuff. But right around probably 2006 or 7, analog became a thing of the past almost.
It did.
And it was sort of for hardcore jazz people.
Yeah.
And folk,
This is when I bought my 2-inch machine that I have in my studio for $1,500. That was a $60,000 machine.
Right. Studer, is it?
No, I have a Atari MTR2. But it was like, $40, $50, $60,000 thing that I bought for $1,500, which is basically like think about it, it's like 24 tracks of compression.
It sounds amazing.
Sounds amazing.
It does.
But everybody just abandoned the things, and they would just be sitting around studios. So I was like, I give you $1,500 for that.
I mean, we probably might have the technology right now to listen to waves, but everyone likes MP3s now.
Right.
It's kind of like the best hamburger in the world is McDonald's. You know, we all have to eat it now. So that's what it feels like to me. So things started to change. 2006, 2007. Then the plugins start. Well, once that really starts to come in,
yeah, that was the real shift.
The drum samples and Stephen Slate starts really getting smart, and then the greats endorse these things.
The greats endorse them, and then people start mixing in the box. Everything's mixed in the box. Then
yes,
when I say mixed in the box, meaning mixed in a DAW,
correct.
So that you have micro mixing, you get infinite passes at things.
We all manipulated everything and made everything easy, the tuning, the timing. And so the artist didn't have to work as hard.
Right.
And so everything became more about the song as opposed to the performance. Mm-hmm. The performance kind of got waylaid over there somewhere. Unfortunately. And so when you did hear a great band with great players, it would be like, wow, how did they do that?
That's right.
That became the weird ones.
Right. That was the anomaly.
The anomaly. Where
it used to be
yes.
the main thing.
Yes. And then it all got changed. I don't know when that moment happened. You know, it was sort of like hazy around 2016. And right. Then really hip hop just started to turn into rock music.
That's right. And that was...
Is that whole...
Yeah.
You know, Aerosmith started something and wow. Go fast forward and now it's real life.
Right.
And then the greats came, you know, the NWAs and the Jay-Z's and the Kanye's, all the early records. It was like, wow. You knew they were all digital, not much playing on there, except other than the Roots,
right,
who were always amazing.
Yeah.
And everyone started to sort of rethink it all. Maybe this is easier. It certainly is cheaper. And I don't have to keep buying tape, and I don't have to... In fact, I got plugins for guitars and drums, and that's when it just... Everything became perfect.
Right.
And it's sort of the Rolling Stones that you and I listened to the first time we put the vinyl on.
Right.
And it all went away.
All went away.
And now we sound like really old people because we love that. But at the same time, I think you and I both embrace the new...
Absolutely. Embrace new technology and things 100%. Like that. Yeah.
And so when we listen to certain records, we're still gobsmacked at the talent.
People get mad at me. I always say this because there's pop music that I really think is great. And I love production because that's...
Right.
Because I know what it takes to produce a great song. And I know just to find a great sound with a great, it's just, sound design is so important. And a great low end is important. And
like you listen to a Kendrick Lamar record.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay.
Right.
I think I'm pretty good, and there's lots of pretty good, that guy's, whoever produced that.
Yeah.
Whoever put that together, a Dr. Dre record, they're geniuses because those records are amazing.
Right.
And so you can appreciate both for what they are, but I don't think anyone should compare them ever again.
No.
Because that age has gone. And moving ahead, because we're kind of caught up to 2022, I think it's all going to change again.
To what?
What do I think is going to happen? I think there's going to be a sort of resurgence again of real,
real instrument playing.
Yeah. But using the technology, like I guess we talked about Porcupine Tree, they kind of do that. Like,
yes. Yeah.
Linkin Park did it.
Yeah, Linkin Park did it.
Lots of bands really good at it.
Yeah.
And a lot of hip hop records are great at it. But I think what has gone missing in rock is the swagger.
Right.
That whole lull. That you can't even. How do you describe feel? How do you write feel into your chart?
I mean, you can't write feel in the chart. You just have feel. It's just.
That's what's missing.
Right.
And that's sad.
Yeah.
The swagger.
Feels everything.
We were listening to, you and I listening to last night to the blues, to listen to the shuffle.
Right.
Ray Gomez. Listening to him playing a shuffle. People say if you can't play a shuffle, you can't play.
Right. Yeah.
I agree.
I mean, rock music is about shuffles.
Yeah. The Weeknd's Shuffle is a great
That's
song.
right.
Big smash.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to change. I know it's going to change. And I think what people write about is going to change. And I think that's the other thing that's missing that we sort of grew up with, the Bob Dylans and the Joni Mitchells, of course, which was...
Writing music of the time.
Yeah. And
about things that were happening in culture at the time.
Yes. And then all of a sudden, people realized that they had to write about something important again. Because we are going through something. And then that changed. And I think that's beautiful right now.
Yeah.
I don't think kids want to hear something where there's no awareness.
Right.
You know, that's why I love this band I just did, The Warning, because all of their lyrics, there's no fluff. It's like, no, this is what we think. They don't get down to calling names. But
okay, so do you, when you work with kids, they're teenagers, basically, right?
Yeah.
So when you work with people that are 40 years younger than you, right? Do they they don't really think about it, do they? And you don't think about it.
No, but they'll say certain things to me like, "Oh, David, don't be silly. No one's done that in years." And I'll go, "I know, but I liked it."
Right.
So that's always, most of my records have been made with people under 24.
It's unbelievable.
For the last 20 years.
Yeah.
I just read this thing on Paramore not wanting to play Misery Business ever again. It was everywhere because she used the word WH. And of course, it was not accepted. And now, of course, she's out every night playing it. And when she said to me, she goes, "I really don't want to sing this in the song. It's a bad word." And I went, "No, you wrote it. So sing it." "Oh, I don't know." Like, in other words, it was my job to remind her that she wrote the song at 17. And I said, "Go for it. You're angry at this person. That's how you feel." And she ended up doing it. And, then she regretted it. And now she's forgiven herself. Then Olivia Rodrigo forgave her and kind of did the song, interpolated the song. So what I'm trying to say is I really feel that most listeners, especially young ones, really pay attention to lyrics. And I think without that element, you don't have a song.
No.
You have nothing important.
No, it's not a song. Is it a song without lyrics? I mean, like I talk about jazz tunes. I call them tunes.
Right.
I don't call them songs. Right? If they're instrumental.
Yes, correct.
I call them
they're tunes.
Is that that's
depends if Al Jarreau's in it.
Well, if it's got vocals or so, and okay,
Ella
Al Jarreau.
Fitzgerald no, you're right. They're not. Well, the way it's broken up is a third of a song is music, a third of a song is melody, and a third of a song is lyric. Mm-hmm. And that's how people do it today. I mean, I'm not sure you can get into a room with 12 people on a Beyonce song and have that happen.
23 people, but yeah.
There you go. Somebody has the bass line, someone does the top line, someone does. So now it's different, but I still feel no matter what it is, the lyric is what sells the song and moves the song. And there's a lot of lyrics, like, say, a Slipknot record where he's really coming at you. But if you go read those lyrics, they're amazing.
Yeah.
It's not fluff. I mean, Corey's lyrics are great, and Metallica writes great lyrics. And so I think that's kind of what's been missing. I think it's literature. The ability to, like, people to read a lot of books and go, "Ooh, I'd be nice if I could use that word in this song."
Right.
I love that when an artist that takes a word and it's never been used.
Synchronicity.
Awesome.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, change music.
Yeah.
All of these things change the way we think. And there's a message too, hopefully a positive message, but more than that, reaching out to people with your lyrics and making them feel better about themselves, making them feel inspired. I mean, if I make a record and it doesn't inspire someone to do something better, I feel as a producer that I've failed.
Absolutely. I agree.
I don't need to reflect they have enough ugliness maybe at home.
Right.
Or maybe with their friends, whatever it might be. So my job is to take that, because I love the voyage like you do. We call it the voyage, the journey, wherever we're going with the record or the song, and take everybody on a trip so that they can get away.
So you see that David has this very positive outlook, like I do, on music?
Yes.
And for the future.
So,
like, I always look for the good in things. I'm always looking
Yes.
in songs. I'm always looking for the good. As much as it frustrates a lot of you out there when I say something nice about something that you hate, but
well, you never underestimate the power.
yeah.
That's the thing. Some people miscalculate a song, and it's used for another purpose,
Right.
which is evil. That's how I see it. Not that everything should be unicorns and rainbows. It shouldn't be. But it has to emotionally move you. And if it doesn't, you've done something terribly wrong. I think we've kind of lost a little bit of our way there. Probably people aren't reading as many books as they should be, or getting inspired by seeing a story on something and then using it in a song. That's why I love to work with artists that have that element, because when I'm working on it, it makes me think I'm working towards this goal of sort of opening this garden at the end of it. And when we let it, like Bring Me the Horizon, when I mixed that record, Sempiternal, it was so many things, but I got to kind of, like, with the band's help, put that record together in a mix. And it really opened my eyes up, because it was a lot about personal issues and drugs and relationships. But as you're working through it in a room by yourself for like 3.5 weeks, you take yourself on a journey. I mean, the kind of thing where I would come back in the room in the middle of a mix, like, Can You Feel My Heart? I remember going to get a coffee and going, I don't know what the hell I'm doing right now, but I'm just going to drink this coffee and I'm going to go make a call. I'm going to probably look for a cookie. Look for a cookie, get back in the room, 20 minutes out of there. My ears are like a little hurting. NS10s are blasting. And I go, oh my God. And I listen and go, that sounds fantastic. That's a phenomenal song.
Right.
And I would go, I can't believe how good that is. I'm like, when you're working on something, you have no clue.
Right.
No clue. I've never said that's a hit in my life, because I know every time I do that, I'm wrong.
Jinx.
And who knows what people are going to like.
That's right.
And why try? Oh, I know.
I stopped trying to guess that years ago. It's impossible. It's like, I mean, honestly, on my channel, my YouTube channel, you never know what video is going to do well. So I just make videos on things that I'm interested in.
I remember Breaking Benjamin's Diary of Jane, and I'm like, that's the first single. I'm like, nah, really? There's way better songs on the record. I phoned the label. Are you sure? Oh yeah, we're sure. All right.
Good thing that they were right.
Good. Well, there you go. They figured it out. But yeah, I love it when that happens. And the song, it's funny, because the song sort of takes on its own life. Like, you just kind of blast it into the space, into the air, as a mixer and a producer or a writer and the artist, and you just sort of sit there and watch it, and it kind of either flies or it goes down, and it's really sad to see it when it goes down.
Well, I equate that when I make a video, you put them out in the world, and then it's almost like putting out a single every few days or so for me.
Yeah.
And then some of the videos, but I like I said, I don't think of it that I spent 6 months making this video or anything. I make videos that of things I'm interested in, and hope that you guys are interested in it. So this is
your videos are phenomenal, because they have exactly the right amount of practical and theory. So you got the feel going, because you got the feels, because you're playing the drum fills, you got the guitar, and you're into it, you're smiling.
Or I'm playing air guitar while I'm holding a guitar.
Go, listen to that. And it goes, what the hell is he listening to? But they're going, yeah, I kind of hear it, not really. But you're excited, and you're Rick Beato, so I have to like that. And then actually, maybe they'll go, maybe I will listen to that later. Maybe he is hearing something. Of course you are, because you know what's there, because you're listening to the breakdowns of all the tracks. So sometimes it's not that great to look too much under the hood. Yeah. Because you're going to see stuff you don't want to see. Right. You know what I mean, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, oh, really? Yeah. Oh, that's not that good.
Do we want to hear Keith's
solo?
Part soloed?
No.
No, it sounds amazing in the mix, though.
Just leave it in the track.
And that's all that counts, right? It's got to have the vibe.
Sometimes you look too much. It's too much. It's like seeing...
You don't want to know how sausage
somebody
is made.
doing something you don't want to see them do.
Right.
So, sometimes it's good to be able to walk away. One thing I always did that I loved when I was mixing was walk outside the room and close the door, and I would blast the mix.
Yeah, and hear what it sounds like.
Yeah.
Through a wall or through in mono, because it's in mono at that point.
Yeah.
And you know kind of if somebody's listening to it from the next room what it sounds like.
Well, it was also, do I still like it?
Right.
Do I still want to listen to it again?
Yeah.
That was always tough, you know. And that was the beauty of the console. You could sort of go down the SSL or the Neve or whatever it is and not be, there's the speakers.
Right.
Symmetrical.
Yeah.
The full dynamic range of the way it all hits your ears was wrong, sitting in the middle.
Right.
Because it was just there. And it was funny because people look at speakers when they're mixing, you know, Rick, they're looking at they're waiting for something different to happen.
Right.
And I would always say, what are you waiting for? You didn't do anything. And they go, oh, yeah. You have to move something and then it happens. Oh, like it's going to do it by itself out of the speakers.
Right.
Don't look at speakers. Don't sit in front of them. Get the hell out of the way.
Yeah.
And let the music fill the room.
Yeah.
You know, or just move around a lot. Because people don't listen to music sitting. That's like a robot.
Well, I used to when I was a teenager and, you know, listening to my favorite records.
Really?
Well, I wouldn't sit between the speakers. I'd just be sitting around
With headphones on?
Yeah. Seeing where things are panned, you know.
People said to me, hey, what do you think about Atmos? I know people are talking about it all the time. People love it.
Yeah.
And I always tell them I'm having enough problems mixing in stereo. But I understand the user end, but how do people listen to Atmos? You just did a whole bunch of interviews. What do people at home do?
Everybody has, I mean, a lot of people have just different systems with different amounts of speakers. So it's kind of a different experience depending on how it was mixed and what it was mixed for.
Oh, I see.
But I don't listen to anything in Atmos right now. I mean, I don't.
Jeez, you old guys.
I listen to music in the car. I listen to music in my studio through my monitors, but I listen to it as I'm doing stuff, you know? I'm wrapping cables up, I'm moving stuff around. I'm typically when I'm listening to music, I'm listening, but
you're doing something.
I'm doing something typically. I'm doing something, but I'm focusing on the music though. But I use that time to be productive.
The great thing about music is like different things in different hours of the day.
Right.
You're going to listen to something different to get up in the morning and go work out, then you are to go to sleep. You know, music is almost like this 24-hour therapy. Even if it's running in the grocery store and you don't, the supermarket, and you don't realize it, you're kind of like, you're bobbing along.
But I always want to hear what new is coming out.
Me too.
That's the one thing. Yet, when all is said and done, if I want to put on something just for enjoyment, it's going to be something sloppy, and it's probably going to be from the 60s or 70s. Sloppy in a good way. I don't mean sloppy, it just means with imperfections.
Mistakes.
With mistakes.
Yeah.
Or with feel. Because some of it doesn't have mistakes. It's just burning playing.
I never forget I watched you on your video listening to Queen, Roy Thomas Baker, and those mixes, which are perfect.
Perfect.
I don't even know.
I know. Oh, my God.
I want to get inside Roy Thomas Baker's head and go, how did you do that?
Yeah, how?
A genius.
How?
Never gets enough credit either.
No.
Genius.
Yeah.
Certain records bypass everything. Sort of take it to a whole new, level of great. Trevor Horn, all these
same thing.
Phenomenal producers.
Yeah.
Mixers.
Where everything sounds great on its own, and when you put up all the faders, it sounds mind-blowing.
And it all comes together.
Yeah.
In the song, the artist, the producer, the mix.
Yeah.
The audience. And this oneness happens. I don't think they're really, sort of going back to that, there's probably anything more powerful in the whole world than that.
Yeah.
And you can time travel with music.
You can.
It's the only thing you can
Music
really
recording is time traveling.
Yes.
Because a lot of times parts are done at different times.
Yes.
So it is time traveling.
And that song takes you to that moment in your life.
Yeah.
Your first kiss.
So listening to a song is time travel. If you listen to a song that you liked back in 1968, or recording a song, if you're recording it with overdubs, it's time travel between performances that happened in different times.
Yes.
Maybe in different cities and different you know.
Music sort of lives outside everything.
That's
it
right.
runs its own realm, its own reality.
Yeah.
It is incredible how powerful. It's scary.
Yeah.
It is. You have to be kind of. It's like the dragon sometimes too, because it's thrown me around the room, working on something many times where I think, I got this. Yeah, I got this. I'll get this mix done in 4 hours, and 5 days later, it's throwing me against the wall, and I think I know what I'm doing.
It's
painful.
It is.
Music is, and practicing. You know, you see these Tommies, and what's his name, the guitar player from Australia, he's so
Tommy
great.
Emmanuel.
Tommy Emmanuel. And he's playing, and you're like, okay, wait a minute. How does he do that perfectly for 7 minutes without making a mistake?
I know. It's unbelievable.
Like, how much practice?
A lot, he told me. I mean, that's the thing is like Tommy's like, oh, I practiced this morning for this, you know, and
Pat Metheny.
These guys practice all the time.
Showed up early for your video.
That's right.
That's dedication.
Those are the people that you know, change music, though.
Yeah, they learn that. Yeah, like what you did today. Like people that time shifted everything.
Yeah.
And it's still happening. That's the greatness.
It is. David, thank you once again for inspiring me to do these things on my channel, these interviews, and now you're part of that series of them. I really appreciate it, and
I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
You're great at what you do.
Appreciate it. Thanks for being here today. Thanks, everybody. Hit the subscribe button, and we'll see you soon.